You see Drake's little Drake the Snake Robert video? Did you hear about that one?
No. Yeah.
Drake's little taco. Not little.
Not little, he said.
Not little. Not hard though. Floppy. Like a floppy taco. Coach Greg, in today's video, I'm working out with Evan Holmes. He's a local guy with me here in Halifax. He's gonna put me through a science-based workout. Now, I did a big bike race yesterday. Legs are sore, so we're only training upper body. I can't wait to get into this. Hopefully I learn a thing or two from Evan Holmes.
Appreciate you having me, Coach. Let's do it.
All right, let's get at it.
Yeah, so we're gonna start with incline dumbbell. I don't know how many warm-up sets you usually like to do. For my first exercise, I usually like to do like 4 warm-ups.
God, you do 4 more? Yeah, I guess if you're going really heavy. You know what I do right now? 1 warm-up set.
Jeez.
But I train my whole body every 3 days, so it's not like the old training I used to do. But yeah, for like a bench press, I would do 4 warm-up sets before going really heavy. Go at 40s here. I think I've done this exercise 3 times in the last several years.
Damn.
I only do machines essentially now.
Well, usually I do machines as well. Right now I've been doing incline dumbbell because I want to get good at it. I want to get strong incline dumbbell just because it's fun to be strong in incline dumbbell, but I usually do machines as well.
What's hard for me is I had a major cycling accident. I ripped the tricep off the bone, and so it's very, very weak. My left arm is hard. Like from here to here, I can barely straighten out my arm even with no weight. So like the right arm, it feels like a joke, like to do this. It's like I could do 100 reps without problem.
Yeah.
But here, it's like very difficult. So it feels okay, but I may actually not be able to completely finish the set. I actually had 2 separate bike accidents. So this is 1 surgery and another surgery, 2 separate bike accidents. And so for me, when I do any tricep exercise, to straighten out my arm, I can barely contract it. There's hardly any kind of strength, and I've lost half the muscle in my tricep. So I usually do machines. That way I can kind of push harder on this side and the machine goes up together. When I do like 1 arm at a time, it's a lot harder. What are your thoughts on pausing at the bottom here? Pausing versus just a touch and go.
With a movement like a dumbbell press or any press where there is tension at the bottom, I think it makes a little bit of sense to just at least have control down there because you don't want to be cheating or bouncing and you want to maintain control where the muscle is experiencing the most tension. And a pause is good because it means that the weight you are moving is entirely because you have the strength to move it, rather than utilizing the stretch reflex a little bit.
Yeah. And so one thing I did with bench pressing was I always paused at the bottom because I've seen so many guys tear their pecs, and I'm like, I gotta stop ego lifting because every now and then I do the touch and go bounce set and I feel a little bit of a twinge. It's like, I don't want to be one of those guys. So I kind of left my ego at the door and I paused everything because I just don't want to get hurt.
No, I agree. I was actually gonna ask you what you think a common mistake for beginners is, and I would say ego lifting.
Absolutely. Trying to think that the heavier the weight and the fewer the reps, the more muscle you're gonna get. Most people think heavier weights, lower reps, you're gonna build more muscle, and then higher rates is for toning, but it's like, it's not the way. We all know that you can build just as much muscle doing higher rep sets, 15, 20, as you can from, for example, doing 3 to 5.
Yeah, and regardless of what rep range you're doing, like you have to make sure you are ensuring control because, like you said, risk factor, and then also just because that way, that's the way you're going to make sure that the muscle is doing the work and not other muscles or physics or stretch reflex or you're bouncing around or whatever. So I
Absolutely.
agree. Yeah.
All right, I'll give it a try with the 60s there and see. Can't believe how hard it is on the left side. We're talking about women's bikini. We got a women's amateur competitor. She looks phenomenal, but to me, way too lean for what we need to look for in women's bikini. We need to bring back femininity. It shouldn't be whoever's the leanest, the hardest, the grainiest that's winning these shows, but the way it's going right now, I feel like bikini is doomed. We need to do something about it. Now remember, my opinion means nothing because I'm no longer a judge. You know, I only judged for what, 20 years, but now I'm not allowed to be a judge because I actually have an opinion, and I would say a good one. Are you with me? Do you want to see striated girls that look like Coach Greg on stage, or you want to bring femininity back?
Yeah, so I've been dealing with some injuries and I'm trying to stay at maintenance because obviously if you're trying to heal an injury, you want to have enough calories and nutrients to facilitate healing, but I can't push training very hard, so I don't want to be in a surplus because I don't want to just be in surplus and get fat for no reason.
So when I'm injured, I
but
focus on more body parts are not injured, and I focus more on the cardio. Like if you thought like maybe I'll do more of a cardio routine for the next month or so and just kind of maintain my current body by doing like maybe a third of the volume.
Yeah.
I've had a number of injuries throughout my life, from torn muscles, broken bones. I've never taken more than a week off ever. I always train what's good. Like when I had a hip operation, I came here, I was at this exact gym 3 days later on crutches, and I was training the left leg. And I was just riding the bike with one leg if I had to. If I had this arm in a sling, I'm doing the left arm only, and there's always something you can do. Never give up.
And the research actually shows if you have an injured left leg or an injured, like, say you can't train your left quad, if you train the other side, it's called cross-education, and the nervous system actually allocates nutrients to the other side. So if you train the uninjured side, it rehabs the injured, or retains more muscle on the injured side, which is super interesting.
It's funny, the first time I ever learned that was in university, and this is going back 700 years because I'm so old, but like literally I remember listening in exercise physiology class and learning about this cross-education and being like, oh, so if I ever hurt my right ankle, I'm doing my left leg, and I never stopped.
Exactly. It's crazy because the left arm was moving quickly. Like it was still moving fine, but I think it's like it's kind of.
I have plenty of power till here, and then it just lets go, and it's like, it's hard to explain. Like it might look a certain way, but like I just give out and it dies. It's almost like the muscle doesn't fire. So I'm working around the injury. A lot of people would just say, oh, I'm not going to train. I'm just going to give up.
Yeah.
Well, I found a way. I do machines, and allows me to keep pushing both sides, while still having good technique.
That's what I was gonna say too, like the fact that your chest and shoulders are so still evenly developed, despite not being able to train as hard on the left side, that just demonstrates what we're talking about right there.
Do you ever lift heavier than that or fewer reps than 5? Because my personal opinion is 5 is on the very heavy side of things, and you're more likely to get injured doing, say, the 100s for 5 than, let's say, the 80s for 12. And so what is your opinion on that? Should you actually go that heavy? Is it beneficial? What do you think?
Basically, we know that as long as you take a muscle close to failure, that's what triggers growth. You can get similar growth with higher reps and lower reps, although there have been a couple studies that show better growth with lower reps. It's generally the last 5 reps before failure that generate growth. And that's just due to motor unit recruitment increasing toward the end of a set. But if you start with a weight that you can only do 5 or 6 reps with, then you're close to failure right away.
You do want to lift heavy. You got to lift like this guy. You got to lift very safely. Don't just throw the weight up and say, I need to get this rep. But if you don't know what you're doing so much, better to play it safe and maybe go with a bit lighter weights.
All right, so do you want to warm up on this, or?
Actually, I'm fully warmed up from that, and so when I go from one machine to the next, I don't even warm up. I just go right into my hardest, heaviest working set. But I notice you do more in that 4 to 8 rep range. I do more 12 to 15, and so maybe it wouldn't work for you. For me, I can just go to my heaviest top out set right away. I don't do a lot of volume. I train my full body like 2, sometimes 3 days a week. And so how about you? What do? Do you warm up a couple times?
Yeah, it just depends how I'm feeling. I mean, obviously I'll do less warm-up sets for an exercise that's training the same muscle group that I've already trained. So we just did incline dumbbell, and now we're gonna do some flat press. So I'll probably do 1 warm-up set on this just to get a feel for what my top set's gonna be. But I definitely won't do like 3 or 4 like I did over for the incline.
All right. We're up on this exercise, and because I have one weaker arm than the other, I actually have more weight on this side than the other. And for me, I like going through a full range of motion as much as possible, a deep stretch at the bottom. Guy like Sam Sulik, he's more into like the partials. I don't know if you've seen his training, but he likes to start off a bit higher. He doesn't like that deep stretch, but for me, I feel like the deep stretch is really that long length partial range of motion. That's really gonna build muscle, especially the research lately. What are your feelings on that? Do you think it'd be better to start like higher from the ground and basically push here? Or is it better to get a full stretch down and then press up?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the person in the sense that if you have the mobility to go deep, then you should. If you don't have the mobility to go deep, then obviously don't do that. But don't force it too hard, because the further that the humerus goes back in extension, the shorter the muscles in the back get. So around the scapula and around the humerus up here that attach to the shoulder and stuff, and the shoulder blade. And if those muscles get too short, then they can't actually produce any force to stabilize. And so you're actually going to lose a little bit of motor unit recruitment and force for the chest if you don't have the stability in the back. Research is always progressing, so nothing's set in stone.
Yeah, but what we do know the research just says is to train harder than last time, which is progressive overload.
Exactly, that I agree with you 100%.
All right. This is almost entirely what I do for chest when I'm training my chest. I really don't do any other exercises in this gym, and I do train at several gyms.
Do you usually, or do you usually not?
I used to all the time, especially when I was into powerlifting, but since I've just been going from one machine to the next, I just couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, fair enough.
I also had a problem at one point where it was pinching on a nerve and I had numbness in my thumb. I forget what it's called, but I think it was called Corvain's or something like that. And it was like this numbness in my thumb and I had to give it a break and then I just didn't get back into it.
Just from pressure of the strap?
The strap digging into like a nerve, and I think it's called Corvain's. I call it textitis. It's the same nerve that's in here, and so the pressure was causing so much numbness. And I went to the doctor and like, why can't I feel my thumb? And they said something about, I think it's Corvain's, but man, it's been,
I don't know, that's above my pay grade.
A while, yeah.
Straps is definitely something, at least from like a beginner mistake perspective. A lot of beginners don't necessarily use straps because they don't know how to use them or they don't really know what they're for, but with something, like if you're trying to get the most back stimulus out of a back movement or like hamstring stimulus from RDLs, you definitely want to use straps because you don't want your grip to limit how much of a training stimulus the other muscles that you're actually trying to train get.
I agree, and I find like the VersaGrip, it's less complicated. You just wrap it around in 1 second and you go.
Yeah.
So I did like it, but I did have that textitis, we're gonna call it, so.
Fair enough.
Yes. During this exercise, do you ever pull with your hands like this, or you ever supinate or pronate? Do you feel there's a big difference in your back depending on your hand width or grip?
Yeah, so like I said, because I want to get lats and upper back with this,
yeah.
I want to keep my hands a little more narrow. And so sometimes it can be helpful to supinate.
Okay.
Because that's gonna, as you supinate, you see my shoulder, I externally rotate the shoulder.
Yeah.
And so as you supinate, it's gonna keep your arms in tighter.
Okay.
If I wanted to do this for all upper back and not get any lat out of it, I would pronate a little bit. Yeah. And let my arms kind of move a little wider.
Okay, so for upper back, more of the pronated grip, so hands on top, pull up, and more for the lower lat, pull in with your hands this way, even supinate, like hold a cup of soup and pull into your lower body.
Yeah.
What about if we start like this and pull and rotate as we're doing it? What could that add?
As you internally rotate, the lats are gonna lose leverage.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily giving you more upper back. It's just giving you less lat. So that's why I say if you keep a narrow arm path and you keep your hands neutral or supinate all the way through, keep your elbows tight, you're gonna get lat all the way through. There's gonna be tension on the lat the entire range of motion. Yeah. And then as you bring your scaps back, you're gonna get upper back as well. So doing this isn't doing anything except just losing tension off the lat in the end of the range of motion. All right. Because the lat's not an external rotator, at least not a super strong one. So it's better in terms of getting more bang for your buck to keep your arms a little tighter. All right, I'm gonna do this set with more of a supinated grip just to mix things up. And if there's one thing that Coach Greg does not lack, it's intensity. And if you've watched any of his videos, you probably already knew that. Now, first question is, it's important to do one arm at a time versus both at the same time? It's a good question. So right now the research is showing that if you do one arm at a time or less muscles at a time, you get better recruitment in the muscle. Because your nervous system, your motor command doesn't have to allocate as much motor command to all different places. It can just go to one place, right? That's so interesting. I never thought of that, but it makes a lot of sense. Think about when you're doing like a curl, for example. Yeah. And then you can't do curls with both arms, but you can get a couple more if you do one at a time. Yeah, I do that all the time. Exactly, and that's because you're able to get a little bit more motor recruitment to continue moving that same amount of weight if you do one arm at a time. I never thought of that. It's like your brain is thinking of two arms at the same time. If you do one arm at a time, it can focus more on that one arm. It makes sense. Yep. Science-based lifting has done to the fitness community? Overall, I think science-based lifting is a net positive for everyone. I think that there's obviously things we can learn. Now, some people criticize it because they think that just because you're training science-based that you're training easy. But you can train hard. I've watched you train. You're training to failure with good form and using science all at the same time. And so why don't we take all the good from everything? Yeah. The science, I'm gonna grab all the science I can, all the harder than last time I can, and roll it up into one. I am in 100% agreement with you. Yeah, like I always gonna train hard, but there's things that I know now that I didn't know 20 years ago because the science wasn't
wasn't there. And so why not apply that? If there was no such thing as science-based lifting, we'd be all training the same way from the 1970s, doing 3 times a day workouts, doing 20 sets per body part every single day.
Yeah, no, it's, I agree. It's like medicine. I'm glad science has advanced medicine to make it more effective, or else we'd still be doing some crazy shit that they were doing in the early 1900s.
Now, what are your feelings of, say, doing a drop set, like, say, doing the stack for 5 reps and then dropping it maybe 30 pounds, doing like 100, and doing like an extra 3-4 reps? Like, what do you think of that versus just like 1 set to failure?
So, that's a pretty nuanced question. The reason that we hit failure on the set is because we're not able to continue to recruit the same amount of motor units. So what you're doing by doing a drop set is by, like, let's say you're training 100% of the muscle with your top weight, but then once you hit failure and you do a drop set, then you're only training 70% of the muscle, right? And so, but that's still creating a ton of fatigue.
You're hitting failure again.
Especially because it's kind of after failure. And so what that's doing is creating a ton of fatigue to train less of the muscle. So it's better to just do straight sets, adequate rest in between for to failure or close to failure. And that I would advocate that above, like.
So rather than doing like a drop set to failure and beyond, double drop set, just doing the craziest set ever, why not just do another set to failure?
Exactly.
It's hard for most people to know where failure is. Like,
it's a great point.
They're doing leg presses and you're like, yeah, that was hard, I couldn't have done another rep, but then the gun is at your head and you could have done 5 more, and it's like, how hard did I train? Plus, on something like lat pull downs, I find I get to failure super early. Then I can only go halfway down, so I can't do a good rep under control, so I've hit failure. But if I swing a little bit, I can get 5 more, and I feel like I need to swing or I'm not getting any growth. But for a beginner, you just keep perfect form and go to failure, you're great. But as you get more and more advanced, you gotta kind of like cheat a little bit to get yourself to failure. Like,
I do think it's really important to train to failure at least regularly to know where it is. And the other thing is too, most people, if we're being honest, never train anywhere close to failure.
Absolutely.
And so if I'm gonna try to keep it super simple, I would just tell people train to failure. Because inevitably you're gonna train not to failure some days if you're feeling tired and stuff. So unless you're a real hardo, or you've been doing it a long time, you're very familiar with where failure is, it's probably best to just keep it simple. Just train. But
it actually works. Whatever you did last day, just try a little bit more than that day and you're good. It doesn't mean an extra rep. It could just be 1 second longer, a bit more control, just harder.
100%.
Some days you won't feel it. Like mentally, not every day can I go harder than last time. Some days I'm in the bike race and I'm like, I can't beat this guy. I could if I could just mentally do it, but I'm not there because I'm too tired mentally from pushing myself. Like yesterday's race, I'm mentally not there. If I had to go as hard as I did yesterday, I couldn't do it. I need like a day to relax my brain, like not just the muscle, but the brain.
No, there's 2 types of fatigue, right? There's brain fatigue essentially, and then there's local fatigue. And so there's like, people call it CNS fatigue or like local fatigue, but it's supraspinal, which means brain or above the spine, and then there's spinal fatigue, which is local fatigue.
Still young and hip.
Yeah, you're more hip
than I
am. You're more hip than I am.
48 years old.
I've been seeing a lot of videos of him walking around wearing goofy ass pants. So.
You see Drake's little Drake the Snake Robert video? Did you hear about that one?
No.
Not little.
Not little, he said.
Not little. He didn't give 2 shits. He's like, yeah, I did it, so what? He's so famous, he doesn't give a shit.
He's untouchable.
You may as well leave into it. You're gonna be embarrassed about that? Not hard though. Floppy. Like a floppy taco.